For this lesson, we're going to work on using our graphing calculators to do regression lines. So our objective is I can graph regression lines on our calculators. Just an understanding for statistics, regression lines don't necessarily model well everything. It's just that we want to learn how to use the regression line, how to interpret the information, but with an understanding that, for instance, in some cases, we're going to have other models that would be a better type of regression. We're going to learn about regression lines here. So my situation here is in my Toyota Prius. As the temperature goes down, so does my miles per gallon on the Prius. So what I want to do is I want to model this on the calculator. So what I want to do is as I turn on my calculator, I look to entering this into the lists in the statistics. So if I go to the stat button here, and I go to edit, that will edit my lists. Now, if you already have data in one of the lists, you want to clear it out first. Remember that you want to use the clear button for this or instead of the delete button. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to arrow over to that, and I could just clear out each individual item if I wanted to, but a quicker way is to arrow to the list heading itself, hit clear, and then if you arrow out of that, as I hit enter, I now have the whole list cleared. Now make sure you use clear rather than delete, because delete will get rid of the whole list, and we want that L1 there to enter data. So I'm going to put the temperature in L1, so I'll put each of these in, 75, 70, 65, 60, 50, and 40. Okay, now as I go to my other list, I arrow over to the list 2, and I'm going to enter in each of the matching miles per gallon. So 52, 51, 51 again, 49, 48, and 45. Now do a double check to make sure you've lined up everything as the data suggests. And then what we want to do now is we want to look at this on our graph. Now these values aren't in our typical -10 to 10 window, so we want to go up to our window and we're going to change what the window looks like. So I'm going to go to window, and notice my X values here go between 40 and 75, so I'll expand just beyond that. Maybe I'll go from 30 to 80. Okay, it's kind of a choice here as to what your values want to be. I like to open up the window a little bit bigger. Maybe I'll have my my units go by 10. Okay, my Y values, they also go, notice the lowest value is 45, so maybe I'll go from 30 up to 60, because it only goes up to 52. So let's go from 30 to 60, and I'll also go by 10s on this. So I've set up my window so I'll be able to see it. Now we've got to be able to turn on the plots so that we'll see the dots on the graph. To do that, you go above the Y equals, second Y equals would be stat plot, and we want to turn the first plot on. So you hit enter, and then you hit enter again so it turns it from off to on. And now let's look at our graph. What it does is it gives us the data on the graph as to where those points go. And that looks pretty linear for what the data suggests. Okay, just so you know, outside of these temperatures though, it doesn't get as linear. It looks differently, so that's why this model might not be the best one for this approximated data. Now what we want to do is we want to come up with a regression line for this data. So the regression line, what we do is we look under the stat again, and we want to calculate what it is. So I'm going to go to stat, and I want to go over to the calculate menu. And under calculate, down on number 4 here is linear regression. So I'm going to arrow down to 4, and there are other regressions for other times, but this is a linear regression. I'm going to ask the calculator to do a linear regression, so I'll hit enter. And what this tells me is what the slope and the y-intercept for this is. So what I would do here is I'm going to write down my equation. So here, my equation for the regression line will be y equals, the a is my slope, so I'm going to put 0.19, and x, and then it's going to be plus the b, plus, let's say, 37.7. Now these are approximations of this approximation, so that I could actually go and graph that in my y equals line. But even better yet, the calculator will do it for us. So just so we know, that's our equation. This interpretation is that the miles per gallon will be going down 0.19 for every degree it goes, the temperature goes down. And then this says that if we're at 0 degrees, my miles per gallon should be about 37 miles per gallon. Now, let's go to how our graphing calculator can graph it. So if I go to y equals, I want to enter in that equation, and I could just type it in, or we could pull it up from the calculator. The calculator has stored this information, and so what I do is I go to this vars key, that's variables, and under variables, I come down here and I pick out statistics from number 5, so arrow down to statistics. And then notice that I've got different menus up here. If I arrow over to EQ, which stands for equation, at the top of the list is the regression equation we just created. So I hit enter, it enters in the whole regression equation into y sub 1, and now when I hit graph, it will draw the line right through the middle of my data. So when we do this, we enter in the data into our lists. We can change our window to see the data on our calculator. Then we go ahead and calculate the regression line from that using the stats key. And then we put into y sub 1 the regression equation to graph it.